heard something of him. I don't believe in reading bios because you can intelligently discern and read that information for yourself. And if you read those, you'll see that he's been in the mining business for a long time, a sixth-generation miner. He comes from the hills of West Virginia, and he's been president for many, many years, and first president in history to be elected by acclamation for 3 consecutive terms. So you can read all of that. But he comes at a time when our nation is in crisis. You come at a time when our nation is in crisis. We're in crisis educationally. We're in crisis as it works to relate to our health care. We're in crisis as it relates to jobs. We're in crisis as it relates to our families. So the nation is at a very key turning point. When I was a boy living in St. Louis, we had a pot-belly stove. We didn't have inside plumbing as I'm blessed to have it today. We had an outside toilet. We ate serpent biscuits on many occasions. It wasn't Alaga syrup. It wasn't log cabin. It wasn't Mrs. Butter. It wasn't any of those. The syrup that we ate came in a silver can, and it had black printing on the side. And my aunties or my grandmother would take a can opener, and she would punch a hole in the top, then turn it and punch a hole in the nut on the other side of the top. And then we would pour it on our plates. We stood around the table, me and my cousins, and we ate serpent biscuits. And we enjoyed every bit of it. And we licked our fingers, and we were looking for more. And many times when we didn't have no bacon, many times we didn't have no eggs, many times we didn't have no juice. We just had water. And I was raised like that. And so I appreciate the fact of what was. I'm also grateful for what is. That pot-bellied stove, Cecil, heated up our house. And we used coal to heat that stove. And the truck would come by on Leho Street, and they would drop coal in front of the house. Me and my cousins would go and get the buckets and pick the coal up and put it in the buckets and bring it to the house. And then we would set it in a little box in the house because the coal was used for the fire in the stove. And as we put the coal in the box, coal don't do nothing for you if you leave it in a box. Coal does not create any activity if you leave it in a box. Coal cannot heat up anything if you leave it in a box. And so we would get kindling. I know some of y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Kindling is little small pieces of wood, and you would put it in the stove along with paper. And you would take some of the coal and you would put it in the stove. And you would light it. Sometimes it wouldn't light initially. So you would get you some coal oil and some kerosene. And you would pour it on the coal and the kindling. And you would hopefully step back and you would take a match and throw it in, and all of a sudden, whoosh, you had a fire. The coal would burn a long time, but the coal had to be restored. And you know, once you put that coal in the stove and it got hot, the stove would turn red hot, and it would heat up the whole house. What I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, is that we got a brother here today that is hot like coal. And he's come to put coal on the fire in the city of Detroit. And once you turn him on, he's going to heat up the whole room. Labor needs to be like coal. You need to heat up the whole country. Labor needs to let folk know that we have come too far to be turned back now. We have come too far, done too much, made America too great, given up too much, sacrificed so much that we are not going to be turned back. And labor needs to get organized and organized and organized and organized, because folk are marginalizing us. And unless we get organized so that we won't be marginalized, we're going to be categorized in another situation. The reason that Cecil Roberts is in Detroit is because he has the ability not only to motivate, to stimulate, and to lift up folk, but he also has the ability to organize. He goes down deep, because you got to go underneath the surface of the earth in order to retrieve the coal that is there, to bring it up, to put it in situations to heat your condition. Here to heat our condition is the President of the United Mine Workers of America. Let's give him a Detroit welcome. Our friend, our brother, and worker, and civil rights leader, our friend, brother, Cecil Roberts.
Let me start, as you would, reading the Bible at the beginning. First of all, I cannot top that. God has blessed me in a mighty way, though, to bring me to Detroit this morning. And He has blessed you in a mighty way to bring Reverend Anthony your way. Let me return the favor, if I might. I am reminded of Dr. King in Birmingham. And, of course, we had a fellow named Bull Connors back in those days that didn't quite like some of us. And he said, yeah, if you want to go ahead and demonstrate in my town, you'll end up in my jail. And in those days, people knew what that meant about being in Bull Connors jail. May not be seen again. But Dr. King also said, and I want you to think about this as we proceed on here momentarily, and I want you to think about this. Dr. King at one time said, if you don't have something, not somebody, something that you would die for, you do not have a life worth living. And thinking back to those days, Dr. King was preaching night after night after night from the church pulpit. And he was trying to get people to be arrested. And the churches would be packed, full, overflowing, more than one sermon a night. Then Dr. King would call for volunteers to be arrested the next day, and everybody looking at their shoes. Nobody wanted to go to jail in Bull Connors town. And one night, and believe it or not, Dr. King was a man, and he got frustrated like everybody else. And he told the congregation one night, it's one thing to preach from this pulpit, but I must tell you, you must preach a sermon with the way you lead your life every single day. And we want to thank you, Reverend Anthony, for not only preaching from the pulpit, but we want to thank you for the way you lead your life every single day. God bless you, Father. Let's give the Reverend an outstanding ovation. He ain't got everybody else.